Hi, I'm Jessica Spangler with Holistic Approach Piano Studio. I live and teach in Metro Detroit, Michigan. This video is to help my students or any student improve their practicing skills. This is probably not the most glamorous of musical skills that people think about trying to improve, but I wish I had been taught these things when I was younger. I would have made progress a lot more quickly and I would have had a much bigger repertoire. I just didn't know that efficient and effective practice is a skill all its own and every bit as critical to good musicianship as every other musical skill. A lot of times my students or their parents ask me, how much time should my student be practicing daily? And I honestly don't think an arbitrary amount of time is the goal that you should be shooting for. Your goal should be to know your piece or a section of your piece measurably better when you leave the bench than when you sat down. If you're a student of mine, I referred you here so that I could demonstrate a little more in depth how to practice effectively without taking too much of your lesson time. Trust me, contrary to what you may think, your teacher does know. They can tell if you practiced or not that week and if your practice is working for you. Not because your song is perfect or not perfect, but just by how much it improves between the time we see you. So number one, do not barrel into the music. Tunnel vision on your first note, oblivious to all the information that the composer has given you for your help. It's like a gas gauge or an oil gauge or tire gauge in your car. If you ignore it, you are going to be stranded. You're going to run out of gas, or in this case, you're going to have to stop a couple measures in because something is not going to sound right or feel right. If I had $1 every time a student started barging into the music, not remembering that they might be in 3/4 time, and they're putting that little phantom count in there. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, so if you just check, then you'll know it's right there for you and it's not cheating to look, so look. Don't forget to check the key signature and maybe warm up with that scale so you're in the right key. Check those dynamics and those tempo markings. Take a bird's eye view of the piece and see if there's any codas or repeats that might send you on a detour, okay? If you just barrel right in and keep going, you are going to get lost. So look at the roadmap of your piece. So number one is, do not rush. Gather all your information before you start. Number two, this was so painful for me, but I don't tolerate bad attitudes, so buck up. Do not go faster than you can play the whole piece well, or the section that you're working on well. Do play slowly and deliberately, not pushing a finger down until you have read the note and are sure of what to press. Do not guess. Yes, ear playing is a great skill. I'm an ear player myself, but if you are a new reader, the whole point is for you to make the connection between the lines and spaces and the keys they go with faster. So read it and then play. I always say to my students, say it before you play it. Don't be pushing stuff if you don't know what to push yet. Playing slowly and correctly is what teaches your hand what to play. Your eye might see the right notes and the right pattern. Your brain might even understand it, but you still have to teach your hand what to do, okay? So if you are fumbling around quickly with your hand, even though you see the right note, you're literally teaching your hand to go to the wrong note first, and it will want to do that every time, and it will be much harder to train it to go back to the right note when you've already been doing the wrong one. So just don't do it. So number two, do not practice new material quickly. Number three, do not play hands apart regularly. Do try to play hands together whenever possible. Now, if you have a very technical passage you're working out, by all means figure it out. But for the most part, as a rule, especially for beginners, it's much more beneficial to play hands together, just more slowly. It actually forces you to slow down and coordinate the whole movement from the get-go. And it can actually make a passage harder to learn if you work on one hand at a time for too long. So number three, hands together. Number 4, 5, and 6 go together. Number 4 is do not try to play the whole piece straight through in an attempt to make progress on it. Do practice small sections at a time. I recommend 2 or 4 measures at a time. You may want to sight read through an entire piece the first time you get it, just to familiarize yourself with it. But when you actually sit down to hash it out, make sure you don't play any more of a piece at a time than you can play well. So take 2 measure increments, especially of more difficult passages, and work them out first. Do not go on until you can do this. And this leads me to number 5. Do not only play within the bar lines. I know I just said to practice 2 measures at a time, but don't stay there. Do overlap those sections, and that will help you cover the transitions. Transitions are the hardest thing I find my students that are new readers for them to play, for they're just learning to look ahead in music. And so they tend to slow down or stop at the end of lines or the end of measures. And the way to attack this so that they can play through the whole piece without stopping is to start linking those 2 measure phrases together or even overlapping them. Try starting in random places or making random phrases to make sure they can play through those. And not going on until they can do it. Gradually link them until they can play a whole line or more of the tricky parts especially. So get a couple measures down, add a couple more, make sure they got those down, and then if you can play straight through that without stopping, you know you've got it. You're ready to go on. And doing it slowly counts. In fact, that's how you should be doing it until you know the whole thing and can bring the whole thing up to tempo little by little. This leads me to number 6, which is do not go on after making a mistake. Do work backwards. If you play a passage and miss a note, no big deal, but don't correct it and then keep going. You've just trained your hand to go to the wrong note first and then fix it. And no one actually wants to hear a song where someone makes a mistake and corrects it over and over. It's kind of painful. And so instead, go back, make sure you know that passage that was hard, giving you trouble, add it to the ones before it. Okay? Don't keep going after it. Make sure you can not only play the passage by itself, but further on in the music so that you can know that you can play through, on and through the difficult passage. All right? So work backwards. If you want to make progress every time you sit down to the piano, this is the way to do it. If you want to feel like you're always stuck at the same spot in your method book, by all means, make a mistake and keep reading and ignore it and see where that gets you. Number 7, this one might give you a sigh of relief. Do not practice for long periods of time. Do give your full attention to short chunks of time, okay? It isn't the length of time that you sit there. In fact, your attention is going to wane after a little while. So it's much more efficient and effective to dedicate even a half hour to really work out a section to the point that when you get back to it next time, it's solid and ready to be added to. I find long periods really don't add much to how much I can gain in a day. It just frustrates me. Now obviously the amount of time varies with whether you are a beginner or a young student and whether you're more advanced and preparing for a big performance or festival or something. You may have longer pieces and you may need to be there longer, but the general rule still applies. Don't overdo it. I had to learn this the hard way myself very recently. So number 7, quality over quantity with your practice time. Shorter chunks can be effective. Number 8, do not forget dynamics, fingering, technique, posture. Do practice how you're going to perform. If you get too far and forget to add dynamics or nail down a comfortable fingering, it can be very hard to go back and add all that in. So try to practice the way you want it to sound in the end, only slower. It's so much easier to pick up the pace, add a little speed, fine-tune the dynamics, than it is to totally change, retrain your hand to play a passage very softly that you have been banging out all week. So, number 8, practice, play how you would perform. So I'd like to give you an example of how a lot of students practice and how to try out some of these techniques, okay? In front of me I've got the Piano Pronto Movement 1 by Jennifer Eklund. I'm not affiliated with the company or anything, I just like this method book for some of my students. And I've opened it up to page 59. This is by Bach. It's a musette that she has arranged for probably late elementary level students. So let's say that a student was finishing up the first page in the key of C, 4/4 time signature, and all of a sudden there's a key change and a time signature change, and they're having trouble getting from here to here. What a lot of students do is they'll play this line, stop, figure out the next one, and they have trouble getting through it, okay? So I haven't practiced this, so let me try it here. And that might sound funny to some beginners and they can't predict it, so they don't know what to play. And then they look over here, find a new hand position, might not be paying attention to the sharp. And what did I do there? I put in the phantom count that a lot of kids do. They feel like it's still in 4 and they just kind of pause at the end, okay? So let's go through how I would have them try this. First of all, I would have them play the key change. Make sure they can play that measure very solidly. And then I would go backwards and add the previous measure, making sure they can still play through it, all right? All right, so they know that section. Then I'd want them to go on and learn this one. Alright, now I didn't even hold that top note, so there's for not practicing. So they would know this section, they'd know that one. Now I want to kind of get them across the line, across the page, train their eye to go up. So we're going to do from this measure to this one, and we're going to do it very slowly and deliberately. Just the transition. They're going to play, and they're going to land on that G a few times till they're sure of where they're going. I want them to be sure of it. Okay, and once they are sure of where they're going, it's so much easier to keep going. And so that's how I recommend your child or your student or you practice, no matter what level the music is. If it's beginner, if it's advanced, put together that hard part so you can go across it, and instead of continuing this way, go back a little further this way. Make sure you can still do it. A lot of times they'll find that there's this, sensation of dread that, oh, the hard part's coming, so they'll still panic, and you just have to remind them you know what to do. Do it slowly, read it before you play it, see it coming, look ahead. You got 2 whole beats to think about what's coming next. So you can do it, and then have them start back, another line back and play through. It should be much more smooth, and hopefully if they can learn how to do this at home, they will not be spending so much time in lesson practicing the piece. You'll be able to get through a lot more music. So these are what I put together for you to help you be more effective and efficient with your practicing. These are based on things I find myself telling my students and things I've learned from my past and present teachers and my personal experience, and also gleaned from articles, one of which I will list below for your reference. And if you are a student of mine, I hope these ideas will help you feel more confident to work on new music even when I'm not there. And it should help you to understand what I expect your practice time should look like so that you can be prepared for each lesson and we can always be going further.